Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I have a few technical notes to share. I'm Allison Wilson, Communications Director at the Institute for Sustainable Communities. This event is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all registered participants as soon as it is available. The chat function is on as well, and if you have any technical issues or questions during today's event, please send them through the chat, and a staff member from the Institute will contact you. After the panel session with our speakers, we'll be holding an audience Q&A session. So you can submit your questions for our panelists anytime during today's event through that Q&A function. And now to introduce our event and panelists, here is the president of the Institute for Sustainable Communities, Dion Ferris.
Thank you so much, Allison. You're on mute. Thank you so much, Allison. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the Institute for Sustainable Communities and the second episode of our Climate Equity in Action series. In this series, we talk with leaders from around the world who are challenging the climate change status quo, integrating equity and inclusive sustainability strategies and investments. For those of you who are meeting us for the first time, the Institute for Sustainable Communities is an international non-governmental organization. We are committed to partnering with communities and local leaders around the globe. The Institute's mission is an equitable and sustainable future that is shaped and shared by all. Our approach to sustainability prioritizes the people and the places that are the hardest hit by climate change and environmental degradation. And our strategies and solutions tackle the underlying economic and social inequalities that exacerbate the impacts people are experiencing. The Institute for Sustainable Communities delivers programs and public-private partnerships in 6 countries in Asia and Southeast Asia and across the United States. We have offices in Beijing and Shanghai in the People's Republic of China, Dhaka, Bangladesh, Mumbai, India, New Delhi and Pune, India, Montpelier, Vermont, and Washington, D.C. Today, we're joined by esteemed renewable energy and energy efficiency leaders from China and India who are on the forefront of work in Asia. They're joining us in a conversation today about equity and decarbonization in the post-COP26 world. I am very glad to spearhead this important discussion today. And now I'd like to introduce our 3 esteemed thought leaders and thank everyone who's joined us as participants today. Dr. Yang Fuchang is the Senior Advisor on the Climate Change and Energy Transition Program at the Institute of Energy at Beijing University. Dr. Fu Chang's work on China's sustainable energy strategy and policy spans more than 4 decades. His research experience is extensive in energy efficiency, in the buildings, industrial, and transportation sectors, in decarbonizing cities, in electricity and renewable energy, and climate change. Next, Anjana Seshadri is a leader with the Neve Fund, whose mission is to build sustainable growth in small and medium enterprises in India. Ms. Seshadri is a seasoned environmental and social governance, or ESG, and sustainability professional with more than a decade of experience in consulting, financial services, and private equity. She's experienced in integrating ESG and equity, experienced with debt instruments, and with raising development capital from global development financial institutions. Next, Dr. Praveen Saxena is Chief Executive Officer of the Skill Council for Green Jobs Skill India mission. Dr. Saxena is a renowned energy policy international expert. Frequently, he is the representative of the nation of India's renewable energy interests before multilateral organizations and in international forums. In 2017, Dr. Saxena was awarded the International Business Leadership Innovation Excellence Award from the government of Malaysia. That introduces our leaders. Again, my thanks to each of our leaders today and everyone for joining us. Due to a prior commitment, Dr. Fu Chong could not be with us in person today. Instead, he will kick us off with his video and his overview of the post-COP26 just decarbonization work that's ahead of us.
My name is Fu Xiangyang. I'm Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Energy, Peking University. I have been involved in climate change, energy, and environment issue for many decades. So I'm very happy to participate in the Climate Change in Action, this workshop, and would like to discuss all the participants on these issues. Last year, the COP26 is a very important issue and to discuss about the climate change because we think that is very urgent. We have to do something and to reduce the CO2 emission cut. But unfortunately, we have to see because COVID-19 have a very strong impact on the economy growth and the people's life. So 2020, you can see the economy growth in almost every country is dropped very deeply. And last year, 2021, the economy rebound. And of course, simultaneously, the energy consumption is increased. Also, the CO2 emission is increased. And we understand globally, energy consumption center or have a move to Asia because Asia now many countries economy is growing very significantly, and so that is means because they have no enough natural gas and oil available, and so they use the coal. Compared to other countries is huge, and so if in the future, in the next decade, if the climate change target in Asia country have to understand how can get off the coal consumption, and that is a very challenge. And so here is we have to think about other financial issues and help them to shift from coal and from fossil fuel to renewables. And so the question is how can we deal with the coal issue? And with first, of course, that have a different. You can see under the last minutes, and they have argued between the other developed country and India and China have is a phase out or reduce the coal, and finally. And with the document statement, that means we reduce and phase out based on the different countries' situation. And you can see the coal consumption in Asia, particularly in China, is huge. Coal production consumption in China is account 50% more in globally. And so China now is first things they like to cut CO2 emission, and first you have to cut coal consumption or have to phase out coal. So that's bring the social stability, and so energy transition equity is come out to be a #1 issue we have to pay attention to, because so far in China, the coal production, consumption, and also any industry related to the coal, that's a total employment is about over the 10 million people. And so this is very important. And now we have involved in this study, and we think if we can design a very very good Chinese policy, and also have something from finance, and from the education, from other, from renewable, and that create more job. And so in this case, we have to use all the means and to cope with the job losses due to the coal phase out. And so we now think about nationwide, to particularly industry sector, and also is a coal mine based policies. So we have to think over use all the means. And so if we can get a very smoothly transition, and so that's better. So I think is the transition justice is a key question. And so government have put a lot of money and to educate workers to transfer to other positions, and so they can keep a family, have a food, can live better. And so, but that is also very challenging for the U.S. If it is a #1 economy in the world, still is a challenge. But for China, of course, that is also a challenge. And we distinguish what sector have get worse because the coal phase out. So first is a coal-fired power plant. And the coal-fired power plant, you can see in China now, is 1,100 gigawatt already. That is huge. So that is consume about 52% of the coal consumption in China. And second is iron and steel. Iron and steel is accounts 15% of the coal consumption in China. And all these coal-intensive industry, also like cement, and also like building, and because in the wintertime, northern China is use coal for heating, for space heating, and so I think is all these sector we have to pay attention to. And for the power sector, do we think if we develop a more renewable can cover the losses of the job off? So I think so, because we have to this kind of analysis already. But different sector, and that is different. Because for the workers in the power sector, and generally speaking, they are skillful worker and easy to transfer to renewables. But how about the iron and steel, cement sector? Is the worker there can easily to find other job? That's also a question. But for the government, they have to prepare something. Is already, particularly they think where they can create a more job, and where they can find a best way to overcome these challenges. For instance, in the automobile sector, because in China now develop the electricity vehicles, EV count is very significantly, and people love EV and they buy more. And in a couple of next year, you can see the EV will dominate in the new car sale market. So that's fine, So for auto industry, and the transfer is much easier. But for iron and steel, that maybe is a different, particularly for the coal-fired power plant. And so we think is how can we do it? We have to use other things. For instance, central government have put not significant money as reserve inside, and to prepare and to avoid the big social instability. And so I think they many ways. And also for China, you have to develop other new sector like information sector, like digital, like auto, something like use the computer information, and also this sector will develop. So I think is if we do the good job on this prepare approach, so I don't think it's have a very huge impact on the economy development. If we don't prepare a good policy and approach, we have a big trouble. I think we have a many ways. And first is we have to use our study and to inform what is our funding and conclusion. And we have used the IO table and forecasting, and to see if in the future either coal is phased out or reduced. And so what is the impact on the economy? Our conclusion is if we prepare good, and also we can see, increase the energy efficiency, increase the renewables, and so that is we can create more job. Nationwide, we don't think that is a big problem, but we need. But the question, condition is that Chinese government have to have a lot of money or a lot of policy is already, and so training the workers, they lost the job, and help them to find a job. But we have to have a good policy to be created. But for the local, for the sector, the story is quite different. And because, for instance, China now have a 1,100 gigawatt coal-fired power plant. They have many employees. So how can we transfer all these employees to the renewables and to other, clean energy development? That's not easy, because there's relocation or others. So we think that's a need, re-education, retraining, relocate, and also have something supportive incentive policy to support it. But last one is the most difficult is co-production based provinces or state. You can see the Shanxi or in the Mongolia, and they are co-production provinces. Many workers, not only for coal mine, but for the coal washing, and also for the coal chemicals, coal power, coal, the iron steel is heavily located in these provinces. And so that's not easy. So we have to say, you have to use the different key to open a different lock, not only use the same policy, same approach. And so in this case, we have to develop a non-coal, the business sectors, and the government have to have a money transfer and to support all these provinces, and also give an incentive and to attractive, make at least area attractive for the new business to come over. And so that's not easy. And so far we don't have a successful story can tell, but we work on that. And so that's I think that is also have policy makers, they understand this kind of a big challenge. And the question is, can we provide a very good approach to them based on the different situation in the different provinces? I think that's we have to reach this goal without any questions. Of course, different people, different group, and they have different ideas. For instance, if I went to the coal-based provinces, they are concerned more. They say, if we don't do, if without coal, how can we live on these areas, right? So that's not easy. Different group have different opinion, but for myself, I'm optimistic, and because you have to think over this. The key question is all this transition, and that is that is a trend you have to follow at first. And don't think this is a herd economy. Simultaneously, they create a new job, create new opportunity for new business. So don't think this is bad. We have to think over. This is, create this new economy, new technology, new science will come over, and also new business will come out. So we have to think that is good. And so China will participate in the global, this kind of a competition for the low carbon. Otherwise, China probably will lose. This is a new engine. It is not stop. It's a help to move forward. And globally, every country is go to the transition to the low carbon economy. If we don't do it, we will lose. And I think in the future, we also can work together. And so for equity, for transition equity and justice, and that is the key issues, particularly for China. And now is a key policy option we have to work on. Okay, Dan, I hand this form over to you, and now you are in charge.
My thanks to Dr. Fushang, and I will take it away from here. Dr. Fuchang prioritizes what systems and policies are needed to achieve a net zero future. He outlined the fact that we are moving toward a new green economy, and there are lots of challenges with simultaneously integrating equity, decarbonizing, factoring in differences across regions and places, the significance of collaboration, educating the workforce, ensuring and creating jobs, and the importance of policy and preparation. And as he rightly points out, that involves multiple factors, multi-layered issues, multi-layered approaches, and really working together globally to ensure that we're moving forward this agenda. At the Institute for Sustainable Communities, we agree. And we know from our work that without equity, sustainable systems cannot be achieved. And it is imperative for the just transition that Dr. Fuchang mentioned. My question is for both of our leaders here today. Our participants would love to hear from you both about this. So what are the biggest challenges to operationalizing equity that you're seeing in your work? Who would like to begin?
I can take it, Dion.
Thank you.
If I may.
Please do.
Thank you. Really pertinent questions there, and also, reflecting from what Dr. Fu Chong said, there are a lot of different cogs in the wheel to put operationalizing equity in work. But what I have realized through my work and what we have done so far at the fund is to enable not just policy and not just the larger corporates and the larger institutions to adapt to a net zero transition path, but also to look at the small and medium enterprises, because in India, almost 50% of the informal workforce works in the small and medium enterprises sector. And it is really important to transition that and give them the means of livelihoods and means, and by doing so, providing them the right kind of growth capital to grow into organized and larger businesses, so that they are able to take on the transition to a net zero or to a low carbon world. And we have realized that in some places, the financial structure are not as developed or as mature, and that needs a lot of work as well. And sometimes access to finance or access to equity is not available in regions that have low human development indicators. And that's where we have tried to work and make some headroom over there so that we try and reach smaller enterprises, medium scale enterprises who have been working at the horizon of new climate tech or newer forms of energy, not just wind and solar, but other forms as well, so that they get integrated into the entire ecosystem. Thank you. Over to Dr. Saxena and Dion.
Dr. Saxena, would you like to join in? We need you to unmute.
Thank you very much, Anjali. In fact, you have very quickly captured the real issue associated with that. I'll take a step back and take my audience about, as far as India is concerned, as how we are talking about greening, green jobs, and net zero kind of activities. Uh, uh, just to recapitulate, in 2015, in COP21, India committed a very unique NDC, and that was that we will be achieving 175 gigawatts of renewable energy. And when at that point in time, I was in Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in Government of India, and we were almost stunned as to how we are going to achieve that, because we were struggling somewhere around 30 gigawatts or so, and we had only 5 to 7 years in hand. And the biggest part was that there was no financial visibility as far as government is concerned. So government was pitching, or in fact we were pitching, that this entire sector would grow through private sector interventions. And the best part of that is, by the time we came to COP26, we have already overachieved that target. And Honorable Prime Minister of India has further enlarged this target from 175 gigawatts to 500 gigawatts. Once again, it's a marathon task. But the best part of Indian renewable energy program has been that about 90% of this capacity in renewable energy has come from private sector interventions. In fact, all capital investments have been done through private sector participation. Whereas if we look back, a large part of conventional thermal power station or conventional electricity projects came through public sector undertakings or government interventions. So that's a big sea change. Another thing I would like to point out, at 2015 itself, government decided that we will have a dedicated organization which would look into what kind of a jobs would be required for achieving these targets. And hence, the Skill Council for Green Jobs was created as part of Skill India mission. I'm fortunate and happy to be heading that organization and seeing how do we really meet the manpower requirement in this sector, and also see whether we can meet the aspiration of our country for more jobs and maybe more decent jobs. At By the time we came to COP26, a few months before that, we announced that we would be, as Anjali mentioned, that we would not only be talking about conventional renewable energy, that is solar and wind. We would move towards newer set of renewable energy. We have talked about hydrogen, not only hydrogen, but green hydrogen we are now talking about. One way of doing hydrogen is that, okay, electrolysis is anyway there. So are we able to produce that electricity from green sources or renewable energy sources, or maybe link it to very closely to hydro or small hydro. In fact, I am a big proponent of of small hydro projects, which somehow getting once again lost during the development process. Uh, Maybe the larger ones have different issues, but small hydro projects, which are in fact also not very small. We are talking of 5 megawatt, 10 megawatts, 15 megawatt, utilizing various small streams. And today we have come to a situation that probably these projects can be utilized for hydrogen generation. We are now talking of floating solar. We are talking of all new types of things. We are actually, as a country, we are also now planning to move into ethanol based ethanol based fuels, and a large part of our PSUs are coal based PSUs or NTPC and NHPC. They are moving towards looking at agriculture waste for generating ethanol, and blending of 20% has been announced by our country. So we have a unique now target of net zero by 2070. We have announced. We have renewable energy. 50% of the power capacity comes from renewable. We are talking of 500 gigawatts of renewable energy. We are talking of once again reducing emissions in next 10 years by 40-45%. So huge target and huge opportunity being in the green job sector. One more thing I would like to mention, that if we are looking at net zero achievement or trying to achieve net zero, it's not only that the sources have to change. We probably have to look at every aspect
my dog is
of our sort of activities. When I say this, I mean that every job or every job role or every activity we do should have a greening component. I mean, how do you really able to save something or the other, save energy, save material, or save or minimize waste, or do an appropriate waste management. So that itself would definitely contribute to a lot of emission reduction as far as countries are concerned. So every household, every activity contributes to low emissions. I was just now thinking this morning that the day we are able to see stars in the sky from a place like Delhi or Beijing with naked eye, probably that is the measure of our emission reduction, not by simply going to numbers that this is this much and this is that much. So this I will like to stop at the moment here on my comments and look for an era when we are able to really see clear skies. Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And I want to start this next question with a thank you to both of you for, one, pointing out the importance, Dr. Saxena, that sometimes small and bespoke is better. And also, I want to thank you both for pointing out green finance as a fundamental theme in terms of the work that we're doing to move these agendas, and the role of private capital in helping some of these things that are so important happen. So thank you both for that. At the Institute for Sustainable Communities, some of our most important work in Asia prioritizes developing and scaling up gender-centric climate adaptation programs. Our Women Plus Water initiative, for example, strengthens the knowledge, the skills, the livelihoods, and the social inclusion of women who are working in rural areas, who are working rural farms in the state of Maharashtra in India. Ms. Sheshadri, my question is for you. The NEEV Fund and the Institute for Sustainable Communities are moving along parallel paths. And I'm so happy to be able to say that. And our parallel paths are about growing access to clean energy while simultaneously improving people's livelihoods. There's a great quote on Neve's website. Quote, "We quantify the impact by measuring the CO2 emissions mitigated and the number of jobs created in terms of gender and inclusion in our portfolio companies," unquote. Marvelous quote. Please walk us through an example about how your work accomplishes these goals. Help us understand how you get it done.
Thank you so much for actually going through our website and citing that over here. So very happy to talk through how we try to envision that and then put that into practice. So we are a double bottom line fund, which means that we create financial as well as developmental returns. And when we speak of developmental returns, that is key to our success and also key to the centerpiece and the targets that the fund has actually ascribed to. These are multifold in nature. One is, of course, providing livelihoods and measuring jobs and the access to services and goods that have been rendered to people who would have not had that access otherwise, especially in areas where, typically these services would not be available. And secondly, to look at projects actively that save or reduce carbon emissions. So every investment that we make needs to satisfy certain entry level criteria. One is that it needs to have a very clear path of impact, a very long term impact, a clear path of impacting or providing or including in its value chain people who are vulnerable, people who do not have access to either clean energy, livelihoods, or health or education. With our energy portfolio itself, which is not just confined to solar and wind, but we also have biomass, agricultural value chain, where it's a farm residue to fuel integration that we have tried and achieved. What Dr. Saxena mentioned earlier, that there is a policy to mix bioethanol in the fuel. So we've invested into a company that does exactly that. So it collects residues from farms where this residue would have actually gotten wasted and burnt because of lack of space, because you are just preparing your fields for the next sowing season, and you want to just burn the waste, and that actually creates the whole the engulfs the whole national capital region of Delhi in autumn. And we keep wondering, where is this coming from? This is not coming from Delhi, it's coming from the hinterlands. So we worked with a company who's actually put together an entire value chain that aggregates this biomass, and it works with farmers on the fields. And we know that there is a lot of labor, and there is in the farms, it's actually a family-run enterprise or a family-run business. There's active participation of men and women both. And we realized that through this particular value chain, this particular agricultural waste is not then dumped or burnt. It's actually sold to this company, and depending on the calorific value of that particular residue or the crop, they actually receive a certain sum of money. So this attributes to nearly 17 to 18% of their seasonal incomes, and this is actually creating another stream of wealth for this particular community. In another project, we've looked at urban waste, the organic stream of urban waste, as one of the as one of the feedstock for energy creation, or for bio CNG and biogas. Now, what this does is that it replaces the requirement for liquefied natural gas or natural gas per se, and we use the waste that would have actually just lay in the waste dumps and generated methanes for years together, and it's just escape emissions. So we've invested into a company that does that as well. In the waste value chain, there is a lot of participation of women, and this is also in the unorganized sector. the women actually segregate the waste, and when the governments also work with these organizations at neighborhood levels, we do not realize that sometimes much of this actually happens even before the government comes and starts segregating the waste. I mean, there are small informal clusters that are involved who take away the waste and segregate it at their level, and sometimes sell away scraps. So what we've done with this other investment is that actually worked with the entire value chain to put together a process where women workforce, especially who are collecting the waste, are also included in the workforce and included in a way where they receive fair wages, where there is a certain kind of a social security that is given to them. And this is a program that's currently we are trying to establish. So our focus has not just been on the classic renewable energy work streams such as solar and wind, but we've also looked at other work streams to try and understand and what are the other energy asset classes that could be included as part of uh, the renewable energy asset class. Dion, I think you're on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are at about 1:15, and I want to make certain that we have ample time for our participants to ask questions and have a dialogue with you. So I'm going to pitch this last question to Dr. Saxena, and I want us to talk about upskilling for green jobs, Dr. Saxena. Particularly what you're seeing in terms of opportunities in India, because you pointed this out as such an issue that we need to deal with. We know that half of India's population is under the age of 25 years, and your organization, the Skill Council for Green Jobs, has a real unique green jobs initiative. So my question for you is, upskilling is often talked about as a gender neutral topic, and it's a powerful tool in our toolkit when we talk about decarbonization. However, as you've helped us know in your work, unless we apply the gender equity lens to initiatives that reskill the workforce, women will continue to be left behind. Can you tell us something about how your organization is pioneering tackling these issues?
Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, this is a question which, honestly speaking, keeps on worrying us also, as to how do we address the issue of um, uh, gender equality in our programs, and also once we are talking about gender equality, we are also looking at are we doing a sort of a uniform upskilling activity in the gender. I have two things to mention in this. As far as renewable energy is concerned, frankly speaking, a much better participation of women is seen. I'll tell you how, and that too gladly, that at the senior level. A large number of Indian organizations, typically renewable energy organizations, are headed by women. And I see that about while an average figure of training or skilling and upskilling is somewhere around 12 to 13% for women. As far as renewables is concerned, we are happy to see something around 22-23% of women participation in this sector, even though this number is not very good. But we would like at least 50%, if not 50, at least 40%. So a lot of efforts toward that, special programs for women in renewable energy sector. But another important area which I would like to touch, which we have very heavily built around gender neutrality, and Anjana mentioned about waste. A lot of women folk is involved in our unorganized waste management sector. Either whether they are sweeping roads, they are cleaning roads, or they are picking up, they are waste pickers. The young little girls are waste pickers. They morning they make a tour and pick up useful items, or rather useful items for them. I mean, it could be plastic, it could be metal. So we have very special programs with an organization called, or an ministry called Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, and we do their upskilling. Uh, while we do their upskilling, we also talk about their personal health and safety, as to how, if we cannot actually take away and say that you do something else, it that becomes a little difficult for us. But we definitely tell them as to how they can make it more meaningful, how they can make it more economically sustainable, and also while doing this work, how can they manage their own health. That is something which we keep on doing. And in this upskilling or reskilling activity, typically in the waste management sector, we as far as our efforts are concerned, we try to see special drive for women, special drive for children, and try to do more equality. I would not say that we have achieved a very huge number. We have done about 400,000 trainings of upskilling in the waste management sector as Sector Skill Council, and about 25 to 30% in this are women. So this number, somehow we are not able to, honestly speaking, touch 50. But yes, it keeps on progressively improving, because a lot of NGOs are also working in this sector, typically for those who are working in this sector. So we try our level best to make it gender sensitive and gender better. Still a lot of ground to be covered.
Thank you very much for sharing that insight. And I would like to just take a moment before we move into our participant conversation to thank you all, Dr. Fushan, Ms. Seshadri, Dr. Saxena, for sharing your insight today and joining us. I'd like to turn over this next segment of our event today to Allison Williams, Allison Wilson, the Institute's Communications Director, who will lead us through sharing our thoughts and questions from participants. Allison?
Hey there, thanks Dion, and thanks everyone for who has submitted questions. There's one that came in from Jamal Sharif. Would the speakers agree that financial incentives should be used to transform industry? Or should the path to decarbonization rest on fines? And as a reminder, if you have questions out there, just use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask them. Does anyone want to take that?
You are taking, or should I?
Please go ahead, Dr. Saxena.
Yeah, I'm taking it.
Yes, Dr. Saxena.
Okay. So as far as if I look at from the government point of view, since I have served for a very long time in government, normally government would not be very supportive of budget-based activities, frankly speaking, because then that itself becomes a self-limiting sort of activity. So by and large, what all government would like to achieve is through incentivizing soft incentives to the industry, and industry to pick up, create a policy environment in such a way, the soft incentives given to industry to move into this, rather than typically pumping in some funds. Whereas, of course, about 20% of the activities anyway always remains with government, and that would continue to support this activity. But a large part, like in renewables, would have to come from industry with their own funds. Have I answered the question?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
We just had one come in from Sumayit Mondal. Sumayit, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. This one just came in moments ago. What we heard about today mostly is the mitigation component. Can either of you please tell us what is being done about gender equity on the adaptation component of climate change?
I think I'll quickly respond, maybe half of it. As far as programs are concerned, frankly speaking, on gender equality for this, India has a traditionally long history of running various programs, typically in rural areas, for improving women participation and women development. Some of them, if I can name, are improved cook stoves, highly efficient cook stove to minimize indoor air pollution. Then we had biogas program. Then we had some programs where women entrepreneurship was developed around solar. In fact, the most recent program I am implementing is training women to assemble solar lights. So you are addressing the issue of livelihood for certain women, and also trying to provide them better light in their homes in our rural areas, which, even though we are set to be 100% electrified, but still lot many houses, rural houses, without electricity. Anjana, if you would like to take it further.
Certainly. Very pertinent point raised. Women and children, especially in areas or coastal regions of India, or regions that are more susceptible to climate change, are most vulnerable set of community, and that is because women and especially adolescent children also handle a lot of household burden to take care of the household activities. With declining water tables, water sources going farther off, with the terrains of high altitude where there are orchards or fruit orchards, with them moving farther up above in the altitude, it puts a lot of pressure on women and children who actually go out every day to fetch livelihood. I think there is a lot to be understood in this whole aspect as to how private sector capital can come in and release or alleviate the misery currently, and also to help them adapt better to impacts of climate change. There have also, in some certain areas, been positive impacts of climate change. Certain very cold regions which were non-tillable have also become tillable. So there are not just negative impacts of climate change, but there are also positive impacts of climate change. And I think that is something that we need to also understand with the Niti Aayog as well, which is the Planning Commission of India. Erstwhile Planning Commission of India has now become National Institute for Transformation of India. And with a lot of other think tanks coming in, we are trying to understand this nexus much better. We have personally, from the fund, invested into a couple of areas where we have realized that food security becomes one of the key issues for people to adapt to climate change. And the way specifically the tropical region functions is that there are certain regions of the country that are food growers, and there are certain regions that are consumers. While all of them are consumers, some of them are the growers. So there is necessity to ramp up the food silo or the food distribution network within the country. And we've invested into a company that actually helps improve these networks, that builds green silos and improves the networks across the hub and spoke model, so that food security is met. And at least in the areas where there is the coastal areas where there is climate variability, and there are seasons where produce is not available, at least in those areas, um, you know, food grains are made available.
Thank you. We've got about 2 more minutes, and I want to get this last question in. So just being mindful that this is a flash answer for you. Equity takes so many shapes and forms depending on your organization. The nature of the program work you do and the region and culture of the place you work in, do you have any tips for an organization that currently doesn't have an equity focus to incorporate it into their work in a meaningful way?
Well, in fact, if I have to quickly answer, each organization has to contribute towards that and do a work which is more energy efficient, material efficient, and very effective waste management. This is the tip we really talk about for all the organization. I think that is one thing which we will have to probably promote and propagate with all our activities. Thank you.
If I could also reflect on that particular point, we need to clearly establish where in the value chain we are playing. For example, for us at the fund, we know that we invest only into small and medium enterprises, and that's our realm of activity. And based on that, we've defined certain goals for the fund and our a future, what it would look like. Based on that, we've also made some forecast as to how many number of people we will reach out to. So I think every organization needs to establish exactly where in the value chain they come in, and what their contribution could be. For example, there are 17 SDGs. I could not go ahead and say that I will impact all 17 of them and focus on all of the 17. And instead, I should only focus on a few that really meets my mandate.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Shashadri, while you were speaking, another question came in. I want to flag it for both of you, as I know that you can see them, to see if either of you can answer that question. So yeah, we are back at time, 8:58, and thank you both for your time today. And we will now hang it back over to Dion to say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Allison. And thank you to our remarkable leaders, Anjana Shashadri and Dr. Praveen Saxena, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge. We thank you for talking about equity, which we need much more of in the climate action space. Confirming what we've all heard today, equity is the foundation for ensuring that solutions include everyone and no one is left behind, both on the adaptation as well as the mitigation side. Whether we stop the degradations of climate change is up to all of us. My question is to all of us, what are you going to do to incorporate equity and inclusivity in your work? I hope we've helped you take away knowledge today that will boost your climate equity work. In closing, a reminder, this event is recorded and will be shared with registered participants along with any unanswered questions in our question and answer queue. Allison, back to you.
Thanks, Dion. So again, as Dion mentioned, we are actively collecting all of your questions. And if we don't have time to answer them, we will work on getting answers and getting those over to you. We thank everyone for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Climate Equity in Action in May. Thanks so much and have a great morning.
Thank you very much.
Or
Thank
evening.
you, participants. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.